Brothers and sisters, let me speak to you today about a matter that weighs heavily on the heart of God and on the hearts of many individuals, young and old alike. It is a matter that affects relationships and touches the core of what it means to love, to respect, and to honor one another as human beings created in the image of God. When a man is using a woman, when his intentions are not pure, when his heart is not set on true love but on self-serving motives, there will be clear signs. There will be behaviors that not only harm but often break hearts, destroy trust, and leave lasting scars on the souls of both individuals involved. Today I want to share with you 5 of these behaviors, 5 signs that reveal when a man is not truly loving but using. These signs can be painful to recognize, but they are crucial for us to understand, especially in a world where love is often mistaken for lust and where genuine commitment is too frequently substituted for fleeting desire. The first behavior that we must be aware of is manipulation. If a man is using a woman, he will seek to manipulate her emotions, her actions, and her decisions. He will make her feel as though she is the one in control, but in reality, he is pulling the strings behind the scenes. Manipulation may come in many forms. It could be subtle, like using compliments to lower her defenses or playing on her insecurities to make her feel indebted to him. Or it could be more overt, pressuring her into decisions she's not ready to make, making her believe that her worth is somehow tied to his approval or affection. God has called us to love one another genuinely, and true love is not manipulative. True love respects boundaries, honors the other person's choices, and does not seek to control. When a man is using a woman, he will do everything in his power to ensure that she remains in his grasp, even at the cost of her own happiness or peace of mind. But love, the kind of love that comes from God, is not like that. It does not seek to dominate or deceive. The second behavior to watch for is a lack of consistency. A man who is using a woman will be inconsistent in his words and actions. He will say one thing and do another, leaving her confused and uncertain about where she stands. One moment he may seem like the perfect partner, loving, caring, attentive, but in the next moment he withdraws, becomes distant, or acts cold. This inconsistency is not a sign of a man who is struggling with his emotions or unsure of his feelings. It is a sign of someone who is simply playing a game, trying to keep the woman in a state of emotional uncertainty so that he can maintain control. God has called us to be steady, to be dependable, and to remain faithful to one another. If a man's actions do not align with his words, if he cannot be relied upon to stand firm and be true to his commitments, then he is not showing love. He is showing that his heart is not truly in the relationship. He is showing that he is more interested in his own gratification than in the well-being of the woman before him. The third behavior is a lack of respect. A man who is using a woman will not honor her as a person, as a creation of God, as someone worthy of respect and dignity. Instead, he will treat her as a means to an end. Whether he is using her for physical affection, for status, or for emotional validation, he will diminish her value. He will take from her without giving, demand without considering her needs, and disregard her feelings as secondary to his own desires. But God calls us to honor one another. He calls us to respect one another as individuals of infinite worth, not to objectify or degrade one another. When we truly love someone, we see them as a whole person with dreams, ambitions, and fear, someone who deserves our highest respect, not our exploitation. If a man cannot respect the woman he claims to love, then his love is not true love. It is self-serving and shallow. The fourth behavior is selfishness. A man who's using a woman will be primarily concerned with his own needs, desires, and pleasures. He will take, but he will not give. He will demand attention, affection, and loyalty, but not offer the same in return. He may convince her that he is too busy to call, too distracted to listen, or too tired to be present in her life. But in truth, he is selfishly focused on his own convenience, his own desires, and his own satisfaction, often to the point where the woman's needs are ignored or dismissed. True love, however, is not selfish. It is patient and kind. It seeks to understand, and it always puts the needs of the other person before itself. Love does not keep score. It does not demand more than it is willing to give. If a man's actions reveal that he is only interested in what he can get from the relationship and not in what he can give, then he is not truly loving. He is using. The fifth and final behavior is avoidance of commitment. A man who is using a woman will avoid any form of commitment. He will shy away from defining the relationship, from discussing the future, or from making any promises. He will tell her that he isn't ready for a serious relationship or that he needs more time to think things over. In reality, he is afraid of losing his freedom, afraid of being held accountable, afraid of stepping up and being the kind of partner that God calls us to be. But real love is built on commitment. It is built on the promise to stand by one another through thick and thin, to be there in the highs and the lows, and to support each other in every season of life. If a man is not willing to commit to a relationship, if he keeps his options open and treats love like something disposable, then he is not practicing true love. He is using the woman for his own purposes and refusing to give back what she so rightfully deserves. Now, you may ask, why does it matter? Why is it so important to recognize these behaviors? The answer is simple. It matters because relationships, particularly the sacred bond between a man and a woman, are not meant to be games. They are meant to reflect the love that God has for us, love that is unconditional, sacrificial, and steadfast. When we engage in relationships that are built on manipulation, inconsistency, disrespect, selfishness, and avoidance of commitment, we are not only hurting one another, but we are also failing to honor God. We are failing to live according to His plan for our relationships and for our lives. And perhaps more importantly, we are failing to live in the freedom that comes from true love. True love sets us free. It frees us from the bondage of self-interest, the chains of manipulation, and the emptiness of selfish desires. It opens our hearts to the fullness of what God has for us, relationships that are built on trust, honor, respect, and above all, commitment. So I urge you, brothers and sisters, to take these words to heart. If you are in a relationship and you recognize these behaviors, don't ignore them. Don't brush them aside. You deserve better. God created you for more than to be used and discarded. He created you for love, real, true, and sacrificial love. And if you find yourself caught in a situation where you are using or being used, I turn to God and seek His guidance. Ask Him for the strength to love as He has called us to love, with a heart that is pure, committed, and selfless. Let us be people who love with sincerity. Let us be people who build each other up, who honor one another, and who reflect God's love in every relationship we have. And may we always remember that true love is not about what we can get, but about what we can give. It is about putting the other person first and honoring them as a beloved child of God. Exploitation in a relationship is one of the most damaging and insidious behaviors that can occur, though often unnoticed by the one being exploited until it has progressed to a point where the harm becomes undeniable. It is when one person continuously takes more from the relationship than they give, using the other person as a means to fulfill their own needs or desires without regard for the other person's feelings, needs, or well-being. This one-sided dynamic not only undermines the foundation of trust and respect in a relationship, but also distorts the fundamental nature of what it means to love and care for another. At the core of exploitation is selfishness, the act of using another person for personal gain. The individual who exploits another often views the relationship as a resource, something that exists to serve their own emotional, physical, or material needs, without considering the toll that it takes on the person giving. It may start with small, seemingly insignificant actions, but over time, these behaviors compound and create an unbalanced, unhealthy dynamic that can erode the person being exploited, leading them to feel drained, unheard, and unimportant. In a healthy relationship, both parties contribute to the well-being of the other. There is a mutual exchange of support, care, and love. But when exploitation takes hold, one person continually takes from the other without reciprocating in any meaningful way. There are several ways in which exploitation can manifest in relationships, each varying in its intensity and scope. The most overt form of exploitation is financial. A person might manipulate their partner into supporting them financially while offering nothing in return. This could take the form of frequent borrowing of money without any intention of paying it back, or consistently expecting the other person to fund experiences or needs that they themselves should be handling. The exploited partner may feel obligated to help, believing that it is an act of love or that they are contributing to the relationship in a meaningful way. But when the giving is one-sided and the other partner refuses to take responsibility or reciprocate, the imbalance becomes increasingly apparent. Emotional exploitation is another significant form of manipulation in relationships. Here, the person being exploited may feel emotionally drained and depleted as their partner consistently demands attention, validation, and affection without offering the same in return. The manipulative individual may manipulate the emotions of their partner by guilt-tripping them, making them feel responsible for their emotional state or happiness. They may feed off the emotional energy of their partner, demanding love and support when needed, but offering nothing when the other person is in need. This emotional toll can be incredibly damaging, leaving the exploited partner feeling isolated, abandoned, and unsupported. Exploitation can also take on more subtle forms. For instance, one partner may constantly ask the other to do things that benefit them but require significant time and effort, while showing little to no appreciation for the sacrifices being made. It can involve situations where one person assumes their partner will always be there to serve their needs, whether it's picking up the slack around the house, running errands, or dealing with their problems, without offering any assistance in return. They may fail to express gratitude, or worse, take the help for granted, treating the other person's time, energy, and efforts as if they are entitled to them. In romantic relationships, exploitation often takes the form of physical manipulation. One partner may pressure or coerce the other into physical acts or intimacy that they are uncomfortable with, using affection or promises of love to get their way. This type of exploitation often thrives on the power dynamics of the relationship, where one person uses their position or influence over the other to manipulate them into compromising their boundaries or values. It is important to note that this type of exploitation is not always overt or malicious. It can sometimes be a more subtle erosion of boundaries, where one partner repeatedly ignores or disregards the other's physical or emotional limits, making them feel obligated to comply to maintain peace or avoid conflict. Exploitation can also manifest in the way time is manipulated. One partner may take up the other person's time with their own issues or concerns, leaving little room for the needs or interests of the exploited partner. They might demand constant attention, expecting their partner to drop everything to focus on them, while never considering the other person's desires or personal goals. This might look like the constant need for validation, requiring the partner to always be available to listen to their problems without ever giving back the same level of attention when the other person needs support. The relationship becomes a one-way street where the exploited partner's needs are left unheard, and their time and energy are consumed without consideration or reciprocity. One of the most painful aspects of being in a relationship with someone who is exploiting you is the slow erosion of your sense of self-worth. The exploited partner may begin to feel that they are nothing more than a tool for the other person's benefit. They may start to question their own value, believing that their worth is only defined by what they can provide or offer to the other person. This sense of being used can lead to deep feelings of inadequacy, leading them to feel unappreciated, unseen, and taken for granted. Over time, this can result in a loss of confidence and a deep sense of resentment, as the exploited partner feels their efforts are continuously disregarded or ignored. It is crucial to note that exploitation can happen to anyone regardless of their age, gender, or experience. It is not limited to any specific type of relationship, but rather it is a pattern of behavior that can be found in many different contexts. People who are kind-hearted, generous, or emotionally open may be more vulnerable to exploitation because they are often willing to give more than they receive. They may believe in the inherent goodness of others and trust that their generosity will be reciprocated, only to find themselves drained and unfulfilled when the relationship turns out to be one-sided. The emotional toll of being exploited can have lasting effects, not only on the individual's self-esteem, but also on their future relationships. Being used by one person can leave scars that make it difficult for someone to trust again or to recognize when they are being treated with respect and dignity. It may make them question their ability to give and receive love or to recognize healthy reciprocal dynamics in future relationships. There are also long-term effects that can arise from being in an exploitative relationship. The exhaustion that comes from constantly giving without receiving can cause physical and emotional burnout. Over time, the feeling of being trapped in a relationship where one's needs are never met can lead to depression, anxiety, and a sense of hopelessness. For some, the constant cycle of giving and not receiving may even result in physical health problems as stress and emotional pain manifest in the body. What is even more tragic is that those who exploit others are often unaware of the damage they are causing. They may not see themselves as being manipulative or selfish, but instead, they may justify their behavior by telling themselves that they deserve what they are getting or that their needs are more important. They may rationalize their actions, thinking that the other person is somehow obligated to give to them, or that the relationship is transactional, where one person is always the giver and the other the taker. In some cases, they may even see their partner's willingness to give as a form of validation or a sign that the relationship is healthy. But what they fail to recognize is that true love, true partnership is about mutual giving, about both people supporting each other in ways that honor and respect one another. The pain caused by exploitation is often not immediately visible, and the person being exploited may struggle with feelings of shame or guilt for not standing up for themselves. They may feel trapped in the relationship, not knowing how to confront the exploitation without feeling as though they are being selfish or unloving. It can be difficult to recognize that being used is not a reflection of your worth, but rather a reflection of the other person's lack of respect and consideration. However, as painful as it may be, recognizing exploitation is the first step in breaking free from this unhealthy dynamic. It requires a willingness to confront the truth, to acknowledge that the relationship is not what it should be, and to take steps toward protecting oneself. This may involve setting clear boundaries, having difficult conversations, or even ending the relationship if the exploitation does not stop. It may require a reevaluation of what it means to love and be loved, and the courage to demand that love be reciprocal, selfless, and mutual. In the end, exploitation destroys not just the person being used, but the relationship itself. True love cannot flourish in an environment of exploitation. It cannot grow in a place where one person constantly takes while the other constantly gives. If we are to honor each other as equals in a relationship, if we are to truly love and care for one another as God intended, we must ensure that our relationships are built on mutual respect, mutual care, and mutual giving. Anything less than that is not love, it is exploitation. Dishonesty in a relationship is a behavior that, though often subtle at first, can have devastating effects over time. It is the act of concealing true intentions, misrepresenting feelings, and manipulating the truth to control or influence the other person. The danger of dishonesty is not simply that it hides the truth, but that it creates an artificial reality in which trust and respect are undermined. A relationship built on dishonesty is inherently unstable, as the foundation is made up of lies and deceit, rather than transparency, understanding, and mutual respect. Over time, this manipulation wears down the emotional health of both individuals involved, leading to feelings of betrayal, confusion, and emotional distress. At the heart of dishonesty is the manipulation of perception. Dishonest individuals are often aware that true intentions may not align with what they present to the other person. They know that, were the other person to see their intentions clearly, they would not likely engage in the relationship in the same way. Instead of being open and honest about their desires, needs, and motivations, the dishonest individual chooses to conceal the truth, sometimes even going to great lengths to fabricate a false narrative about their character, intentions, or actions. This false narrative serves to protect their hidden agenda while leading the other person to believe that they are operating in good faith. One of the most common ways dishonesty manifests is through omission. Rather than overtly lying, the individual may simply withhold critical information that could change the other person's understanding of the situation. This can involve everything from hiding past relationships or significant aspects of one's personal history to concealing one's current emotional state or intentions within the relationship. By omitting key details, the dishonest person ensures that the other person makes decisions based on incomplete or inaccurate information. This form of dishonesty is especially damaging because it can feel less like betrayal, making it harder for the person being deceived to recognize that they are being manipulated. However, the effect of being kept in the dark is no less harmful than being outright lied to, as the emotional connection that should be based on truth is instead founded on a distorted version of reality. Another form of dishonesty is the active fabrication of stories, facts, or emotions. A person who is dishonest may create elaborate tales to make themselves appear more appealing, more admirable, or more trustworthy. They may lie about their background, accomplishments, or feelings in order to gain the affection or trust of the other person. These fabricated stories are often designed to evoke sympathy, admiration, or even guilt, which the dishonest individual can use to manipulate the other person's behavior or emotional response. They might exaggerate their struggles to make the other person feel obligated to care for them or support them, or they might claim to have qualities or experiences they do not actually possess in order to impress or draw the other person in. In doing so, they are not just deceiving the other person, but they are also deceiving themselves as they present an image of themselves that is far removed from who they truly are. The problem with dishonesty is that over time, the lies and manipulations build upon one another, creating a complex web of deceit that is difficult to maintain. Eventually, inconsistencies begin to surface. The person being deceived may start to notice discrepancies in what is said and what is done, or they may begin to sense that something is not quite right, even if they cannot put their finger on it. This creates a dissonance in the relationship as the foundation of trust begins to crack. Even if the dishonest individual continues to present themselves as sincere. The longer the dishonesty persists, the harder it becomes for the other person to trust their own instincts or to feel secure in the relationship. They may begin to doubt their own perceptions or feel paranoid, wondering if every interaction is a manipulation in disguise. One of the most insidious effects of dishonesty is its ability to breed insecurity and self-doubt in the person being deceived. When someone is consistently lied to or misled, they begin to question their own judgment. They may wonder if they are overreacting or being too sensitive when they feel that something is wrong, even though their intuition is trying to signal them to the truth. This can lead to a gradual erosion of self-esteem as they start to believe that they are somehow incapable of seeing the truth or of making sound decisions. Over time, the constant emotional manipulation undermines their confidence, making them more susceptible to further deceit. They may even begin to excuse or rationalize the dishonest behavior, convincing themselves that it is not as bad as it seems or that it is something they can tolerate in the name of love or companionship. Dishonesty in a relationship often comes with a heavy emotional toll. The person being deceived may feel a deep sense of betrayal once the truth is revealed, leading to feelings of anger, sadness, and hurt. The realization that they have been manipulated can be devastating, as it not only breaks their trust in the dishonest individual, but also shakes their faith in relationships as a whole. The emotional damage caused by dishonesty is not easily repaired, and even if the truth comes to light, it can take a long time for the betrayed person to heal. The emotional scars left by dishonesty can be far-reaching, affecting future relationships and one's ability to trust others again. This deep emotional wound can manifest as anxiety, depression, or a constant fear of being deceived in future encounters. Another significant consequence of dishonesty is the way it perpetuates unhealthy patterns in the relationship. Once dishonesty is established, it becomes a coping mechanism for avoiding conflict or addressing uncomfortable truths. The dishonest individual may continue to lie or withhold information to avoid confrontation or to maintain a sense of control over the relationship. This avoidance of open communication only deepens the divide between the two individuals, as the honest exchange of feelings and concerns is stifled. Without the freedom to express one's true thoughts, the relationship cannot grow or mature, and both individuals are left in a state of emotional stagnation. The dishonest person, meanwhile, becomes trapped in their own web of lies, knowing that they must continue to deceive in order to keep the facade intact. In some cases, dishonesty can even be used as a form of manipulation, where the person lies not just to avoid conflict, but to control or influence the other person's behavior. They may use deceit to evoke specific reactions such as guilt, sympathy, or anger in order to get their way. For example, they might lie about their feelings or needs in order to manipulate the other person into doing something they want. This can range from feigning a level of emotional distress that they do not genuinely feel to pretending that they have certain intentions or desires that they do not actually hold. The goal is always the same: to manipulate the other person into serving their own needs or desires, often at the expense of the other's well-being. Ultimately, the impact of dishonesty in a relationship is profound and far-reaching. It chips away at the integrity of the connection, undermining the trust, intimacy, and emotional security that are necessary for a healthy and thriving relationship. While dishonesty may provide short-term benefits for the individual engaging in it, such as getting their way or avoiding confrontation, the long-term consequences are much more damaging. The pain of being deceived, the loss of trust, and the emotional toll that dishonesty takes on both individuals are far greater than any temporary gain that may be achieved. The only way to rebuild a relationship after dishonesty has taken root is through a commitment to truthfulness, transparency, and open communication. Without these qualities, the relationship is likely to remain fraught with distrust and insecurity. Healing can only begin when both individuals are willing to confront the reality of the situation and make a concerted effort to restore the integrity of their connection. Without honesty, there can be no real love or true partnership. Self-centered communication at its core is communication that revolves entirely around the needs, desires, and interests of one individual, often without regard for the perspectives, feelings, or needs of others. It manifests in conversations where one party speaks only about themselves, their thoughts, their problems, and their desires, leaving little or no room for the other person to contribute meaningfully. This type of communication can be emotionally draining and over time alienating. It may begin innocently enough, but if it becomes a consistent pattern, it can erode the quality of any relationship. This behavior signals a deeper issue of self-centeredness, where the person engaging in such communication sees the conversation as an opportunity to affirm their own importance rather than fostering mutual understanding or empathy. At the heart of self-centered communication is the inability or unwillingness to engage in reciprocal dialogue. It's not simply about talking about oneself, which in moderation is a natural part of human interaction. Rather, it's about dominating the conversation in such a way that it excludes others from truly participating. It's a one-way street in a dynamic that should ideally be two-way, where both individuals feel heard, respected, and valued. In this dynamic, the self-centered individual's perspective takes precedence, often overshadowing any thoughts or feelings the other person may want to share. This form of communication can take many shapes. At its most basic level, it often manifests as someone constantly steering the conversation back to themselves, even when the other person may be trying to share something of importance. For example, a friend might begin telling a story about a challenge they are facing at work, and instead of offering support, the self-centered person might respond by sharing their own similar experiences or shifting the focus back to their own struggles. Rather than listening, they are only waiting for an opportunity to talk about their own concerns, undermining the potential for genuine connection. Over time, the other person may begin to feel that their thoughts and feelings are irrelevant, that their experiences are not worthy of attention, and that the only value in the conversation lies in what the self-centered individual has to say. Another aspect of self-centered communication involves the inability to listen effectively. Communication is not just about talking, it's equally about listening, truly hearing the other person's words, understanding their emotions, and responding with empathy. However, self-centered communicators often treat conversations as a chance to showcase their own opinions, beliefs, or desires rather than listening to the thoughts and feelings of others. In doing so, they miss opportunities for connection and mutual understanding. Rather than engaging with the content of the other person's speech, they are preoccupied with thinking about how they will respond or what they will say next. This results in conversations that are shallow and disconnected, where one person is speaking but not truly engaging, and the other is left feeling unheard or unimportant. A critical component of self-centered communication is the lack of empathy. Empathy involves being able to understand and share the feelings of another person. When communication is self-centered, empathy is often absent. The self-centered individual may be aware that the other person is experiencing pain or joy, but they do not prioritize these emotions as they focus instead on their own experience. This absence of empathy can lead to misunderstandings, resentment, and emotional distance. Without the ability to truly step into the other person's shoes and recognize their emotional state, it becomes impossible to engage in meaningful conversations that foster mutual respect and care. The dynamics of self-centered communication are particularly damaging in relationships, whether personal or professional. In intimate relationships, for instance, constant self-centeredness can create a power imbalance. One partner becomes the dominant force in the relationship, taking up all the emotional space, while the other partner may feel overwhelmed, ignored, or neglected. This imbalance can create frustration and eventually resentment, as one partner feels their voice is never heard or valued. Over time, the self-centered communicator's behavior can wear down the other person's emotional resilience, making them feel invisible or unappreciated. The relationship may become unhealthy and one-sided, with the self-centered person's needs being met at the expense of the other person's emotional well-being. In the workplace, self-centered communication can also prove problematic. In a professional environment, effective communication is essential for collaboration, problem-solving, and team cohesion. However, when one individual consistently dominates the conversation, talking over others or disregarding that input, it can stifle creativity, hinder innovation, and deface team dynamics. Self-centered communicators in the workplace often fail to see the value in others' perspectives, reducing the potential for effective collaboration. This lack of consideration for others can create a toxic work culture where individuals feel disempowered, unheard, and undervalued. Furthermore, such behavior can erode trust as people begin to perceive the self-centered individual as inconsiderate, manipulative, or egotistical, making it difficult for them to foster the kind of positive working relationships necessary for success. Self-centered communication is also often linked to narcissistic tendencies. Narcissism is characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a constant need for validation, and a lack of empathy for others. In a conversation, a narcissist may dominate the discussion, seeking admiration and attention while disregarding the feelings and perspectives of others. They may make excessive demands for admiration or recognition, often without reciprocating when others need support or acknowledgement. Over time, this can create a toxic cycle where the narcissistic individual feels validated through the attention they receive, but the other participants in the conversation feel increasingly alienated or ignored. The self-centered communicator in this case may fail to understand that relationships are about mutual care and respect, not just self-gratification. Another form of self-centered communication can be seen in individuals who are constantly trying to one-up others. In these conversations, the self-centered person attempts to make themselves look superior by always elevating their own experiences, accomplishments, or opinions above those of others. They may dismiss the other person's achievements, turning the focus back to their own. This behavior can be draining and demoralizing as it makes others feel as though their experiences are insignificant, and it creates an environment in which the self-centered individual's need to feel superior takes precedence over building genuine connections. Conversations turn into competitions, and the act of listening becomes secondary to the desire to be seen as the most accomplished or knowledgeable person in the room. Self-centered communication can also manifest in passive forms of disregard. In some cases, the self-centered communicator may not actively dominate the conversation, but they may still give little regard to the other person's needs or feelings. This might involve appearing disinterested or distracted during a conversation, showing little effort to engage with what the other person is saying. They may glance at their phone, interrupt frequently, or exhibit behaviors that signal they are not fully present. These subtle signs of disregard can be just as damaging as more overt forms of self-centeredness, as they convey a lack of respect for the other person's time and emotions. Over time, the other person may feel that they are not truly seen or valued, leading to emotional withdrawal and resentment. The impact of self-centered communication can extend beyond the individual conversations themselves. If someone consistently engages in self-centered communication, they risk damaging their broader social and relational networks. People generally seek relationships where there is a balance of give and take, where both parties are invested in the relationship and care about each other's experiences. When self-centeredness dominates, it becomes increasingly difficult for the other person to feel motivated to continue investing in the relationship. Friendships, romantic relationships, and even professional relationships all require a degree of reciprocity and communication. If one party constantly demands attention without offering support, it can lead to isolation and eventually the breakdown of the relationship. Self-centered communication may provide short-term gratification for the person engaging in it, but in the long run, it often leads to alienation, resentment, and loneliness. It's important to recognize that self-centered communication is not always deliberate or malicious. In some cases, individuals may not even realize they are engaging in such behavior. They may feel that their own concerns or experiences are simply more pressing or relevant to the situation at hand. However, the key to healthy communication lies in the ability to balance self-expression with active listening and empathy. It requires an awareness that relationships are built on mutual understanding, respect, and a willingness to engage with the experiences of others, not just one's own. When individuals become mindful of their communication patterns and seek to create space for the voices and perspectives of others, they can transform their relationships into more enriching, compassionate, and supportive connections. Connections.